In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the starter on this Honda Civic. It's located on the back of the engine. We're going to access it from underneath. Let's get started. On the driver's side of the engine bay, you'll see the battery. We'll have to disconnect the negative battery terminal, which is right there. Use a 10mm wrench or socket, loosen up the mounting nut that holds the terminal down, pull it off, and tuck it away so it can't make connection. Now we can safely work on the starter. Looking from the back of the engine from underneath, that's the starter right there. There's a bracket that holds the intake right here that has to come off so that we can actually remove the starter. It's blocking it right now. There's two 10mm bolts going into the intake and a 12mm on the engine block. Let's remove all of those. I'm going to unplug this power steering pressure sensor just because I don't want to break the wire by accident. This green connector here, or retainer, for the wiring harness has to come off of the starter. There's a tab up top that I'm going to push towards the engine. As I do that, since I already sprayed it with rust penetrant, I'm hoping that if I just wiggle it, it will come off. Oh, it looks like my tab just broke. So that's unfortunate, but at least it helps me remove it easier. Wiggle it back and forth and push upwards. Try and help it out with a pry bar. There we go. That's quite stuck in there from rust. And this bracket is bent a little bit, so I'm gonna have to, there we go, pull it back down. This should have space to come off now. Perfect. Back here, there's another retainer that has to be unclipped. All right, I was able to pry that off. Now we have to unbolt the starter since the connectors are up on top and on the back side where we can't reach it. We have to remove the two 14mm bolts, one of which is this right here. Another one is up top. I'll show you that in a second. With those out, we can then pull the starter away and disconnect the connectors. I'm actually going to try to do this by hand and break it free since the long extension was pretty much removing all of the torque that my impact has. All right. All right, there's that first bolt. So the other bolt is a very long one right up here. Now, it's not long at the threads, it's actually just a long shank on the bolt that sticks out and past the starter. 14mm head as well. Let's try and break this free also, and then remove it, of course. Okay, so I have my 1/2" gun on a long extension with a reducer to a 3/8 swivel on a 3/8 14mm socket. That's the only thing I can fit in here so that I don't break the intake and get the right angle. If you have anything else that fits, go for it. Now I'm just going to break this free and remove it. And there it is. Unfortunately, all of that was just to reach it. It's not like the bolt is very tight to begin with. It's just in a very awkward spot. And here is that long bolt that I was mentioning. The starter is now unbolted and probably stuck on the transmission. So, unless yours comes off by just wiggling it, you're gonna have to get something to tap on it with or pry it. I'm gonna take a hammer and a pry bar and just try to break it loose by creating some vibrations right at the base of it. All right, this is gonna be a tough part because it's stuck. I've already tried to wiggle it. I have this old axle shaft that has some weight to it, but it's also very long. So I can use it to tap on the starter back and forth from side to side and hopefully break it free. There we go. That did the trick. I also sprayed it with some rust penetrant. Now, it's still connected, don't forget that. You do have to pull it straight back and wiggle it out so we can get to the connectors. If you follow this wire harness right up here, it's hard to see, but there's a retainer, just like this one. I'm going to pop it off so that I can get a little extra slack out of the harness. Maybe that'll allow me to pull the starter away a little bit more. Yep, there we go. We're gonna have to get this bracket to clear the harness over here. There we go. All right, now you can spin it, and spinning it allows you to get to the connectors a lot easier. So we have the signal wire right here. Press on the tab, wiggle the connector, pull this off. And then we have the main power wire. There's a 12mm nut right here that has to be taken off. This boot is fairly stiff, so you'll have to work around it. Just twist it out of the way. There it is. Let's get that off. You're gonna have to try to hold it while you break it free. Got it. Take this off all the way. Pull the wire off. Now the starter's right here, and all you want to do is just find the right angle for it to come out right through here. You might have to push the power steering line down and out of the way, or get this back in here and twist it upside down. Whatever it takes, but it does come out this way. Okay. And there's the starter. And now you take the new starter, slide it in the same way the old one came out. Okay, there we go. Let's get the connectors reconnected first before we put it in position. Get your wires. There we go. And let's reconnect them. So flip the starter over the right way. You're gonna have to hold it with one hand and with the other, start this wire on. So this wire has this little pin right here. It has to line up with the cutout. There we go, just like that, on the plastic housing of that stud. If that little pin does not line up, the wire can't go in. Grab your mounting nut and start it on there. If you have a lock washer, don't forget to put that on as well. This mounting nut has a lock washer built into it. It's attached. Thread it on as far as you can by hand, and then we'll grab the 12mm and snug it up. Okay. That's bottomed out and slightly snug. I'll give it a little extra. That's it, about 1/8 of a turn. You don't want to break that stud internally. Now don't forget to cover this back up with the boot. It's important that no water and debris gets in here so it doesn't corrode the connection. And make sure it's actually seated over. There we go. Just like that. Pull that boot back. Okay. And we have to reconnect the signal wire, which is right over here. Spin this around and plug it in. There we go, that's in. Now turn the starter and let's start lining it back up with the transmission. Make sure this wiring harness stays on the outside here. Doesn't get pinched between the starter and the engine block. And get this right back into position. A tip here is if you just keep wiggling and pushing, it should find its spot. Oh, okay. There we go. That just dropped right in. At this point, whichever bolt lines up first, start that one in. I'm going to start the bottom bolt in because it's easiest to reach. try to thread it in so I can hold the starter in position while I do the top one. So I'll bring this one in as close as you can to being bottomed out. That'll prevent the starter from moving around. This one's started. I'm going to bring it in quite a bit until it can pull that starter up into place. This will prevent it from falling down, like I said earlier, and will help me line up that top bolt. All right, I bottomed it out, snugged it, and then backed it off. This ensures that the starter is seated, but it's still loose, so I can move it just like that to line up that top one. That one's gonna be pretty tough to see. There we go. Okay, there we go. It's in the hole. And now I'm gonna take my extension with the swivel and just manually spin it to allow it to drop in and catch on those threads, which it looks like it just did. That is awesome. All right, let's get this snugged up here. All right, that's bottomed out. There's no way I can properly torque this upper one with the swivel and the long extension, so I'm just going to snug it up with my air gun. The torque for both of these is 33 foot-pounds, so it's really not that much. All right, that's tight. I'll get my socket out of there. Torque the bottom one. That one you can get to if your torque wrench fits. I'm gonna push this wire out of the way so I can see the bottom bolt. This one, like I said, I can torque, so I will. 33 foot-pounds. That's it. Let's re-secure this wiring harness. Clip that on, and then there was another retainer right over here. And if you disconnected it or unhooked it anywhere else, like I did back here, reconnect that so that the harness can be properly secured. There we go, that's secured now. Bring this bracket in and reattach it on the engine block and on the intake. Snug those two 10mm up and the 12mm bolt. I'm just gonna make this one snug since I can't get a torque wrench in there. Torque for it is 17 foot-pounds, so it's fairly low, but I can't torque it. All right, those are all tight. Plug in the power steering pressure sensor connector and make sure that the line didn't get bent. So if there's a lot of pressure on this wire, pull the line back so it's not under tension and the wire can't come apart.
And finally, the negative battery terminal. All right, that's plenty tight. I can't spin this terminal, so I know that's clamped on properly.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.